Welcome to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. We're here to get real about what really matters, not accolades or achievement, not doing more or having it all, but stripping away the extra so that you can be more present, more grounded, more rested, and more you. We're your hosts and co-founders of Well Rise, Denise
and Kayla. The Good, Better, Betterness podcast is a monthly chat with and for Black women about what self-care is and how you can make it an intentional part of every single day. We share real stories with real women who are devoted to living a life rooted in better wellness and living in harmony with the world around them. Take a seat, take a breath, and explore how deep and radical self-care can transform your life. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. I'm your co-host, Kayla.
And I'm Denise. And today we're joined by a phenomenal guest, Amber Sims. She is the CEO and co-founder of Young Leaders Strong City. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So, ladies, let's play a game. Actually, this is going to be for you, Amber.
Okay. This is how y'all do y'all guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's going to be fine.
Okay.
So, we do a little segment called Who Said That? And in honor of Juneteenth, I'm going to give you a quote that's related. And then we want to see if you can guess who said it.
Okay.
All right.
All right, buckle up because she can get a little tricky with these quotes sometimes. So.
Yeah.
Not tricky.
She looks very mischievous about this, but I trust you.
Yes.
It just depends.
Remember that I said that I trusted you.
And I got you.
Okay.
I don't even know what the quote is. Okay. Ready?
Ready.
So the quote is, nobody's free until everybody's free.
Sounds like Fannie Lou.
Of course you would know that, being the genius and amazing woman you are. Definitely got that right. And what does that mean to you?
It is, especially when we think about Juneteenth and this idea that the Emancipation Proclamation happened in 1863 and a lot of enslaved people in Texas were not free until Juneteenth, which is why we celebrate the holiday. But everybody wasn't free. And there was still like this idea of like, and we'll talk more about this, but, Black people knew, but they couldn't act on it. And so it's also like an action quote too, right? It's like, what do we do for everyone to be free?
Absolutely. That was good. So we're here talking about the connection between racism and wellness, right? We really want to get into this conversation about what are the effects and what does it look like when youth are equipped and or not equipped, right, with truthful information, and really what are the psychological and kind of cultural impacts, right, of racism. So as executive director and co-founder of Young Leaders Strong City, what has that looked like, especially for young people, right, when it comes to passing down this legacy of information and history and how they can connect to it? Are there effects that you've seen in your work?
Yes, definitely. We, first of all, are just now getting the language to talk about what we know that Black people have been experienced, which is, in medicine, they call it weathering on the body.
Yep.
Right. And so that means that you're like physically, right, you're older than you are. But it also means that we're more prone to things like heart disease and mental health issues, diabetes, that are also not biological, which is an important thing to break down, right? It is because of everything that's been created by society, and young people are not immune to this either. And so young people experience what's called ACEs. Don't ask me what all that stands for, but it's adverse detriment of health. But, it's this idea of there are factors, and living in poverty is one. Experiencing racism is one.
Yep.
And this idea that this then is starting very, very young and continuing into adulthood. And this idea of weathering and these adverse health impacts show up in our students that we work with at Young Leaders Strong City, because they are saying, I don't have anyone to talk to about the experiences that I'm having as a Black or brown student or a queer student. And so I feel isolated. I feel like I don't belong. And those can have impacts on their mental health, their physical health, and then also their academic achievement. And so what we strive to do at Young Leaders Strong City is first create a place of belonging, a place where young people can talk about what's happening to them, and we believe them. And working towards, if this is happening to me, how can I build power to begin to dismantle these systems? Because I know that it's not me, right? It's the things that are happening around.
Yeah, that's so good, because we talk about weathering a lot at Betterness Box. So we want to make sure to bring that to the forefront, but we talk about it in the aspect of like women, right? And the fact that maternal birth rates are very low in our community because of, or I should say, are very high. The mortality rate is very high because of weathering on bodies, right? And the bodies of professional Black women, just by being a Black woman in America, right? Our organs are weathered to the point where it is a life or death situation when we have children. And so I've never thought about that the youth, students, were experiencing something similar. In my head, I'm thinking, you know, they're young, they're good, they got good knees. No, like they're actually have weathering aspects, you know, too. So that's very insightful.
And then a couple of things to add is we know in the last few years, racist incidents around against Black students have actually increased.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is like, whoa.
You talked a little bit about empowering them to take action. Can you talk about like some of the steps that happen in between the awareness piece and the education piece and the conversation piece, and then how you are actually like bridging the gap to where they are able to take action in their own individual lives?
Thinking about race and identity, we start there. And so asking students, you know, how do you identify racially, ethnically? What's your nationality? No shade to the students, you know, they don't know. A lot of times people conflate race, ethnicity, and nationality all of the time, and so do adults.
I was going to say adults do the same.
So in this country, nationality is based on where you were born. Ethnicity is based on culture, and race is, you know, the social construct that's based on things like your phenotypes. So your hair texture, your nose, in addition to your skin. And one of the things, you know, that we talk about is, for example, Latinx, Hispanic isn't a race, it's an ethnicity. And so on the census and legal documents, people that are of Hispanic origin that are not Black are actually categorized as white. And that's important to know because people are looking at you and they're making assumptions about who you are, where you're from, da-da-da-da. And for young people, that's hard. You know, to say just by looking at me, people think X, Y, Z.
Absolutely.
And so unpacking that so that they understand, you know, these are your racial identities and how the world perceives you. But then also, how do you want to be perceived, right? You know, what do you want people to know about you that they might not guess? And we take them on historical field trips here in Dallas so that they can learn about Black and brown history that they don't learn about in these funky textbooks.
Come on, funky.
Because, you know, they don't like talking about it. And then our students go on to just like create impact projects. And so organizing their school district to be like, we're experiencing racism on campus and we want to bring Young Leaders Strong City, which is a day-long summit, to our campus to begin to have the conversations and identify where racism is happening so that we can stop it.
Wow. So powerful and amazing work. Like, you in the trenches, sis.
Yeah. And the kids, y'all, they are so dope. They are so ready. They're also fearless. When we think about, so my family, which I say I'm a Texas Bama, you know, Beyonce, move up, like, but for real. My dad's from Birmingham. And the civil rights movement, there was something called the Children's March. And it was led by all young people. Right? And continuing to give them that instruction around, it has always been young people in this country that are like, nah, we're not doing that no more. We want to change. And so reminding them that, sure, adults be trying to hold you back, but it's actually been young people who have been at the forefront of change, pushing our society to do more, to be more radical, to be more inclusive, to be more loving. And that's the legacy that they come from. And getting out of the way, too, so that they can go do it.
That part, getting out of the way on college campuses all around America. We are seeing some of this happen, right? Again, young people are usually on the right side of history. So what does it look like to support them?
Yes.
And stop making it seem like, you know, they're out of control, right? So many different campuses we saw, you know, protests for the war and, you know, what's happening in Gaza. So I think it's just important to make that note that we have to support them. And I love what you said about getting out of the way. Yeah. Let's see what's next. Let's see.
I think one of the topics that we wanted to talk about was that self-awareness piece. Do you have any examples that you can share of when you saw somebody actually come to like realization of like, oh, this is who I am, this is where I'm from, this is what that is, and gaining actually clarity on their self-awareness piece and like how that actually played out in their own community or impact and kind of circle of influence?
So we have students who, we've been doing Young Leaders Strong City for 10 years. So we got students that have been inviting us to their weddings. It is very surreal. Students that just graduated. We had a group of students that just came back from their first year of college, which is like adorable. So and thinking about the identity piece is so many of our students, and one in particular, I think about, her name is Zaya, and she came in and she was really, really quiet. She's a Black girl and just really shy. And would kind of, you know, sit in the background, and, you know, you could tell she was listening, but it was like, does she just want to be here? Did her mama make her come?
Okay.
I can imagine.
Participation was a little low.
You know? And over the years, y'all, like, I would just see her figuring out how to get herself there, and she would start talking. At our last summit, which had over 250 students, Zaya signed up for open mic and performed a rap freestyle. And I was shooketh.
I bet, yeah.
And it was incredible.
Wow.
You know, I'm thinking like Rhapsody, but encouraging, you know, once you have that sense of self, which is so important to identity formation, is connected to academic success. It's connected to mental health success. And she said most recently, we had something for our seniors from high school that just graduated, is I was able to create a positive relationship with who I am as a Black girl. And I learned that here and about my history. And so she's going to Grambling. She's majoring in biology and like music sound engineering, something like super duper dope. But what she's done in her community is recruiting other students to come into our work, which is super important. You know, volunteering to facilitate, continuing to come to meetings, being on the planning committee for the summit. And so you're seeing the ways in which when we create space, and I think about, you know, especially for Black girls to exist and just to be themselves, what happens? What
I heard was she kind of essentially gained a sense of pride, right, in who she was by understanding her self-identity. Can you talk just a little bit about, a lot of times, obviously, we're all in America, and a lot of times Black American history starts at slavery, right? But obviously we know that there's a lot more history behind that you can actually derive a lot of those kind of like more positive experiences. So can you talk about, like, in the work that you do, like, how do you guys kind of structure that curriculum for the youth so that they have other points of reference from a historical perspective by which to kind of like pull in some of those more positive senses of identity?
Yes. So having conversations with them, one, about the resistance that was happening during enslavement, that Black people were doing, the ingenuity that happened. Dallas is home to so many freedmen's towns, which are communities that were created for and by formerly enslaved people. And just the imagination and the brilliance to be able to say, I can start again and I have those tools. And then taking students, we do historical field trips, so we take them to various sites in the community that quite honestly, they have no idea existed. I mean, I didn't. Some of them are not far from here, where we are in downtown Dallas, and saying these were predominantly Black communities where it was completely self-sufficient. Like people, you know, had the doctor's office, theaters, schools, churches, grocery stores, everything that they needed, and community. And what that means, but it creates a certain type of pride. Because so often, and I remember my own experiences being in school, is you're right, we learn about slavery. It happened, but we don't learn about what happened. And then we learn about the civil rights movement. Right. You know?
That's it.
And nothing in between. And then it's like they were free. And then, oh, yeah, y'all got Juneteenth, right? And George Floyd now.
Be happy.
Right? And be happy, right? And it's a very condensed idea of history, and it flattens. And in the process, I'll be honest, it flattens us as people. Part of, you know, the work that we're doing in our communities is humanity building work. To say that we have stories, we have histories that mattered, that matter, that have existed. We came to this country from Africa with skills, with brilliance, the ability to farm. That's why enslaved people were actually sought out by Europeans, right? The ability to farm, to do, you know, the first mathematics come from the continent of Africa. We brought foods with us. We brought our culture, our traditions. You know, we turned religion and God into something that was ours. And framing that differently then says, and so if we're ingenious people, what else can we do? And, you know, it's that same thing for other communities of color, right? It's saying, like, you are not a monolith. You are not the stories that have been created about you. And so let's find different stories and create a different starting point about who we are and where we come from in our lineage. That is so often understated by society, by dominant society, because we know who we are, I will argue, right? But they need to find out.
Get a subscription valued over $100 per season for just $25. Ever felt that rush of excitement when receiving a package? If not, you're missing out on the joy of subscribing to Betterness Box. Listen, ladies, for a limited time, unbox one book, 4 to 5 premium beauty and wellness products from predominantly Black-owned, women-owned small businesses, along with the Betterness Box mini mag and 5 affirmation cards, all for just $25.
Make sure to subscribe at betternessbox.com.
I have a question just about breaking through the clutter and the noise, right? So I feel like with social media, a lot of people are just like, this is today, this is who I am, this is how today is, and they don't want to necessarily do the work. I think maybe in dealing with I'm talking maybe in dealing with other adults, right? People are like, this is who I am. Like, you talk to your mom or you talk to older generations, they're like, this is who I am, and I'm not in the position to change, make impact, and things of that sort. So how does that differ, or where do you kind of like see that there's opportunity in that space to like have people understand that, like, no, like, it doesn't matter if this is your current reality today. You can dream for the future. You can change. Things can be different, and we can actually, through some of the different concepts that you're talking about, see a better future.
Tapping into that imagination piece, and I'm a history nerd, so we'll talk more about that. But I believe that the study of history and of Black culture and this country and beyond, and of culture beyond, gives us a different starting place around who we were. We also have our students sit at the feet of elders in our community, where they get to meet, you know, just people who have created dynamic change in our city. And quite honestly, like, students are like the history, and sitting at the feet of elders are actually my favorite part. And there are stereotypes, right, about young people. Like, they don't want to know no history, they don't care about that. And it's like, no, y'all don't care about it, adults. Y'all didn't learn about it.
Gotcha.
And then our students also take, they be going home and be like, Mama, did you know?
Educating,
and so they're spreading. And just this idea of when we invest in young people, it's a triple benefit. It's the young people that are there, it's the friends that they impact, and then the people that are also impacted. And I see them as pushing back around, this is the way that it's been and it's always going to be that way. Because it doesn't have to be. And they ask questions and they push us in ways that like make me happy, because we had a group of students, I'll say, who were like, we want to bring this whole summit to our district because we had some racist stuff happen. And I was like, how's that gonna happen? Like, that seems like a really big undertaking. And so they wrote to the superintendent and they kept writing to her until she responded. And she was like, y'all are persistent. And we are going to create an equity, diversity, inclusion office. And then we're also going to bring the summit for 200 students in the district. And since then, we've impacted over 600 students because these two high school seniors said this can happen. And there is power in that. And I do think when we are proximate to youth, it creates a certain type of hopefulness to disrupt our hopelessness.
That's so good. I feel like we've lost a little bit of that access to young people, right? If you don't have, especially as single people that don't have kids or aren't raising teenagers, I think the pandemic took that away. I think a lot of people used to volunteer like every Saturday or a couple times a month, right? And so I would encourage, this is me encouraging myself. I'm encouraging myself to get back out there and actually get into programs, organizations that are giving back and doing the work like yours. I want to know a little bit more about like your journey to this work though, and like what made you so passionate about being kind of the catalyst to helping this and co-founding it and all of that, but kind of how that relates to the work and drives you to do the work you do today.
Thank you for that. And one thing that I want to say too, because y'all's work is around wellness and mental health, that's an area that our students continue to push on, especially after the pandemic. They were like, first of all, we're not okay. We are not okay. And we want to talk about mental health all the time. We want y'all to bring this like into the curriculum. We are going to create, exercises. We want to talk about the disparities for Black and brown people. And they really pushed us towards this idea of wellness and embedding. And so thinking toward the future, I'm also, imagining a world in which, because they have different tools and even we have, right? And I, sometimes me talking about therapy with, the people that raised me is very hard.
Oh, yeah.
And these young people have no problem with that. And that is really beautiful to see because they are, I say, with the shits.
I love it.
Every day, and they are thinking, and they are already creating a different way of being that hopefully disrupts these ACEs and, the weathering because they're pausing. And I think some of the, we could talk about this because people don't know how to work with them. I got some interns and, it'd be interesting. But I'm also like, y'all, they are not invested in grind culture.
No.
Like they're not. And they're not invested in working for a little bit of money and not getting paid. Like you can't just tell them like, go work. How much money am I making? Like, is this going to support me? Like, or I could just be at home. And even though I know, being a CEO of a company, that's hard because we're, I'm deep in grind culture at times and we have outcomes, we have work that needs to be done. And yet young people are saying this isn't working. And, the work that you all do is part of that to say like, we have to stop and we have to make time to just like be, but they are really unpacking that in ways that are going to disrupt work in this country. And
it's giving
I delight in that.
I delight in it too. I'm like, yes, speak up. And I'm to listen, if you're going to run a company, especially if you're, recruited. These are people, this is going to be the workforce, right? Like we're going to have a huge exit of people that have been around for a while. The boomers are leaving, y'all. And so what does it look like to create workspaces? What does it look like to make sure that, you know, the actual culture within a corporation, within an organization that is looking to hire young people, like mental health is incorporated, breaks are incorporated, whatever that looks like, right? Just making sure that it's a staple and not like this thing on the side, right? This kind of is right now. It's like, how do I find my mental health or therapy benefits? People don't even know how to find them, let alone use them. And so, I love that they're making it like front and center. If you don't have that, you're not going to recruit the best talent.
Well, I think it kind of ties to some of the conversations that we heard at a conference that we were at this weekend.
Good Soil,
Good Soil Forum. And they were basically talking about, like, even as a leader, right? Like, all of us are obviously leaders of organizations in this room.
Yeah.
And they were saying, if you are not well, your business and your company can't be well, right? So it really does start from the top to allow for that. But it's good to also hear that the incoming workforce is also kind of aligned with that, right? Because then that, when you have alignment from the top and the bottom, just is going to be able to push that forward. And with the continual adoption of AI and things of that sort, that just really allow you to be more impactful and more efficient. That just can exponentially kind of like take hold, right? And then it's kind of ties back to what you said earlier, right? Like, I don't want to just be a worker, right? I am a human when I show up to work, right? And that humanity piece of it, how you're bringing back the humanity into like, we are humans that are showing up in a space to do something together collectively. Now, how do we move forward so that we are all also like enjoying this? Because life is short. Right? I think that's one thing that the pandemic like really let people know, like, life is very short. You almost have to like kind of relish and value each day. So these different things coming together is really interesting to see like how that's playing out, and especially in your space, it's good to hear that.
And they had a coming of age during the pandemic. Our students that just graduated started high school in the pandemic.
That's crazy.
You know, and what was taken from them. What they haven't gotten back, what we as a society haven't apologized and made repair for, is, and I don't think we take enough time to like stop and pause and think, you know, and think about that. And then, you know, and some of the stuff around, oh, they don't work, it's very short-sighted because like, we're not saying like, y'all had a very radically different experience from us.
There are pivotal things that happen in that. I have a cousin.
Key times, too.
I have a cousin who was like graduating. And it was like, she danced, right? So think about like somebody who's graduating from high school, okay? You dance, and a lot of times people transition after that, right? Like if you were playing sports or you're dancing or you're doing whatever that was like part of your youth, you didn't get any closure to that. And so then like, when you don't finish a grieving process, right, you just continue. It just kind of like trickles in and carries in, and it starts to factor your ACEs score and all those different things. That just like the closure, the lack of closure, I think a lot of times people don't pay attention to, because there's just so many things, like prom, graduation.
So much.
Your final, you know, performance, like all these different things that just like add to the trickle effect of it.
They just kind of had to, you know, be okay with. And so creating space, creating repair, you know, thinking about, I ain't got no kids, I got a dog, and, you know, that's a lot. But, you know, like as parents and people that are in community with young people, is creating space for them to be. And, you know, not being like white dominant culture that tells us to move on. Resources are being taken away, right? Like we know that, you know, ESSER funds are already being shifted. That worked, right? We're talking about, we made huge gains as it relates to, you know, reducing poverty in this country, you know, reducing some of the academic gaps that students had. And now they just gonna take the money back, you know, and so we're still trying to disrupt you know, just like this way of being. That like, we kind of had some things figured out for the good.
You know? Our humanity is definitely under attack.
Our humanity is under attack. And so, you know, Kayla, to get to the question that you were asking around, you know, how did I get into this work? I am a Black woman who was a Black girl who grew up in between Birmingham, Alabama, and Dallas, and back and forth. We moved and then came to the suburbs of Dallas in a place called Mesquite. And when I came here in, I believe it was 4th grade, I had racist experiences that happened to me, you know, in elementary school. And, you know, my mom is like, yup, that's not going to happen to you no more. She called the principal, you know, we were called the N-word. Next morning, you know, principal called me to the office. I was like, I never go to the office. What is happening? You know, and the principal was like, I'm so sorry that this happened, but it won't happen again. And it didn't. But even, you know, as I just had certain things as a Black girl that I was conditioned to do, which is be excellent, be smart, be demure, be good. And I was all of those things. I was, you know, an honor society and went to college, made good grades, worked hard, and actually worked in sports for a while.
Didn't know that.
For the NCAA and for the Texas Rangers. And I was very, you know, young in my career, specifically at the Rangers, which is a white organization with very few Black people there in their front office, but a lot of Black and brown people that are on, you know, what you call the concourse, which is, you know, the venue space. And I was having very different experiences from my white colleagues that were based in race. I wasn't getting access to opportunities. I wasn't getting promoted. As a matter of fact, I was being penalized for certain things, and I didn't have the language. Even though I knew something was wrong, I just was always taught to work hard. You just keep working, you can do it. And that wasn't doing it. It wasn't changing anything. And I was at the Rangers when they went to the World Series back to back the first time before they actually won. But it was very much a dream job. It was something that I had worked to do. I networked, you know, to get there. I got the job. I was there. And I was like, I hate this.
Wow.
And, you know, I want to, you know, just take the space, too, to say, like, you can get something that you thought you really, really wanted. And you can also walk away. Peace. I'm not doing that anymore. It doesn't serve me. And somehow I had the wherewithal to do that, like as a 24 or 25-year-old.
It's amazing.
And I still didn't advocate for myself internally in the ways that I should have or could have. And, you know, going back and forgiving that 25-year-old girl who all I could do was get out for my own psychological safety.
Right.
But then it's like, so how do you speak truth to power? And so part of my work at Young Leaders Strong City is to make sure that there isn't another Black or brown girl that has that experience. That we are able to live our dreams, to live in our possibility and our potential, but also to be able to make mistakes, you know, to have networks, and to maybe not even work at all, you know, but to also say that, like, these things happened, period. And it was wrong and it was unfair. And you don't have to stay, right? You don't have to be abused in the workplace, at home, at school, wherever. And it costs us something, right? You know, it took a lot to be able to work for a major sports team. And the thing is, everybody want them jobs, so it don't even matter, girl. We could find your replacement today.
Right.
You know,
like the application, the resumes are lined
that part.
But being able to do that, and then wanting to create spaces where young people could talk about what was happening to them and be believed, and then say, how can I advocate for myself and for others so that this doesn't happen to anyone else, was very, very important to me.
Wow. I love that. It's like this you're giving permission to have this power and agency, not just over their bodies, but like literally their life. And having that lesson that young, oh my gosh, right? Like that's something huge that they can take on for the rest of their lives. So you are literally changing lives. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
All right. We know Juneteenth is coming up. You know, all the cookouts, all the, you know, markets. Shout out to Manifest Your Purpose. Hey, girl. But what is one thing or a couple things you think that people should know about Juneteenth, right? Not just the Googleable stuff.
Yeah.
That's really easy and top, super surface.
I love this question. Juneteenth is so important. It's the holiday about imagination. Black imagination, Black possibility, Black placemaking, Black world making, which just gives me all the feels. I wanted to just take a moment and read General Orders number 3 that Granger brought to Galveston, Texas in 1865 on June 19th. And then also wanted to hear some reactions from you all. Historical documents are important. Reading them is important. So it's something that I sit with and I reread all the time. So just taking a moment. So the order says, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. By order of Major General Granger, F.W. Emory, Major and Assistant Adjutant General.
The hypocrisy,
Interesting.
Right.
free, but stay there and keep working.
Yeah.
And don't be idle. So that means you got to work or you'll be arrested by slave patrol.
Yeah.
It's giving, what the hell?
Right.
I don't think I've ever heard it read out loud.
Yeah.
And maybe I skimmed it the first time I read it, but.
Well, it's quite alluring to just stop at, you're free.
Right. It could have just.
And, the work that you all do, this fact of y'all are free, but idleness is not permitted.
Rest.
You will not be allowed to rest. Right? You will not be allowed to rest when you have been laboring for free for this country that labor has built.
Now, Amber, you're getting me mad. I'm literally hot right now.
And they literally were stay where you're at.
Yeah.
Yes. Now
Because
you work for them.
Can you actually talk about when somebody chose to leave after this? Because there's a whole nother set of laws and things of that sort that were then put in place. The prison was created in this time, right?
Yeah.
For certain reasons. So can you talk a little bit about that too, so that because it's not
what options?
Yes, what you guys are saying, but then they actually took it steps further to ensure that you weren't free.
It was systematic.
And great point. It is it's asinine, it's infuriating, right? And so we can hold space for both because there were policies that were put in place or practices pretty much immediately after. In the state of Texas, starting basically from 1865 onward, but especially from 1865 to 1868, thousands of Black people were murdered. And specifically Black men. And Black men in a specific age category of about that 30 to 34-year-old range, when at one point they were the most valuable enslaved people.
Yes.
And then, there's another order that Granger gives, in 1865, but I think this is on the 27th of July or something. And he basically says that, enslaved people remain there because there are crops that have to be finished. And so y'all go ahead and stay there. And then also white people are getting upset about Black people living in their neighborhoods. So they already start to complain about Black people not working, about them being in houses next to them, about them gathering and causing what they called nuisances. And meeting in their houses and causing disturbances. And so they also order that Black people start working immediately. And the language in these laws, it says no persons formerly slaves will be permitted to travel on the public thoroughfares without passes or permits from their employers, or congregate in buildings or camps adjacent to a military post. And so idleness is sure to be productive of vice, and humanity dictates the employment. And so this is where we get the language that then goes into the Black codes, where we get vagrancy and loitering laws that are still in existence today. So every time I see a no loitering sign, I'm like,
I'm gonna sit right here. You're like,
because it comes from this.
Yes.
And you're very right, is that the start of these things start as soon as slavery ended.
Yeah.
Like there was no rest.
No rest. No.
Rest was not permitted.
It was literally illegal.
And then it's codified into law.
Yes.
And then Black men and Black women who are not working can then literally go to jail. And Black children are also caught in this. If they're orphaned or if their parents can't care for them, they are then put into wards and put into basically these like work for free programs where the white people are providing homes and housing for them. And so this idea of us resting and being able to not work is, literally an act of resistance.
Yes.
It's an act of us reclaiming a right that it should have just stopped at y'all are free.
Right, period.
With all the rights. That's what was so hypocritical. It was like, wait, we got all the rights, but then you just took them basically all away, making us work for the people who formerly owned us.
And then, you think about where, the grind culture and our own culture around you have to be working, you have to be doing something, you have to be busy. And then, settling that with our ancestors who were always working, maybe even our parents who were always working, and just knowing that this was a trauma response.
Absolutely.
To not, being picked up. And then thinking about where my family's from in Alabama, this was, the penal systems were really real. And so how many people we've lost that we just don't know what happened to because they might have been picked up into the chain gang or something like that. And yet.
Yeah.
And this is, where I find,
wow.
My place for joy is that Black people, really saved this country in the sense of it was Black people running, after the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863, being like, bet, we out of here, we're leaving. And, left plantations in droves to join Union armies, to still be, segregated and experience racism, but to give the Union the bandwidth that they needed to win this war. And freeing themselves, emancipating, manumission. And so some of the other names for Juneteenth are Manumission Day, right? Which means, to free oneself, the 19th of June, Jubilee Day, all of these names. And Black people were like, we are going to celebrate our freedom. And a lot of times they couldn't do it in public.
Yeah.
So Black people bought land. Like, we're going to do this on our own land.
Right.
Because parks were segregated or in their homes. But they would find a way to celebrate, and then the creation of these freedmen's towns, which so many of our, poor people went to create our own communities and havens. And I just think about what it means to be able to have that kind of revolutionary imagination of seeing and visioning, to see things that are not as though they were and call them into existence. And so we are here because of that sight.
Absolutely.
It's amazing.
We are here because of that brilliance. We are here because of that imagination. We are here because of that survival.
the other words that were given out this weekend also was because of that grit and the resilience, right? They wonder why
That's true.
we have the grit and resilience now. It's because there's a long history behind it, right? I want to kind of tie that into the work that you're doing today as we kind of like close out this segment. Obviously, we know that Juneteenth was over 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, right? And the passing of the message was drastically delayed, if you will. To me, the work that you're doing is essentially passing this message on, right? And kind of bridging that gap. So thank you for the work that you're doing to make sure that that's not lost, and that the youth do understand this at an earlier age than people of our generation. We're getting that because we had to go seek that out, right? It's not in the curriculum, but programs like yours are kind of bridging that gap and bringing it in, and hopefully, you know, who knows, right? America is in a very interesting place right now, but that's why the work that you're doing is even more important. But can you talk about just like parents, teachers, single people who don't have a connection? How can we get that message? Understand that there's just a lot more built in here. You're free, but you're not, right? Like, what is that key message from that like period of time, if you will? And then how can like parents, teachers, individual Black women working in corporate America who don't have time to volunteer, like how can we start to actually make sure that the message is not lost and that it's like a story that's being told, so that people understand like there's all the emotions, all the angles, all of the things exist in this. Just wanted to see if you can kind of like bridge that gap. But to me, it's like, how do we not make sure that the message doesn't take another 2.5 years, right? Like we need to shorten the amount of time that the message is being told so that people actually understand like this is what's going on.
Yeah.
As it relates to Juneteenth, just continuing to learn and not be content with just like what we've been taught. So, I'd be having my books with me and reading. So this is a book, it's called The Dance of Freedom, and it's Texas African Americans during Reconstruction. I also watch videos on YouTube. I just like sometimes, just put in the search key, Juneteenth, so I can find out like some of the histories and things and hear different people talking. I also know that we tired.
Well.
And so we have to build a community, an army of folks who are ready. So it doesn't mean that we're always doing the work, but the work is always continuing. The thing that I've learned from after, 2020 and also studying history is that, Reconstruction was 12 years because there was extreme resistance and violence from white communities. Absolutely. That is not unlike what we've seen in relation to, some of the advances that have happened after 2020. So everything that we have, we've had to fight for. And we have to continue to fight to keep it. And I know that can sound like a lot of work because it is. But also, it's ours. It belongs to us. And this idea that no one can take what belongs to us. And so that's a message that we can impart upon our children, and teaching positive identity formation, telling them who they are and whose they are, and learning about local histories. When we are in these places that we are in, remember, especially with jobs and stuff, we just passing through. It's not like our forever place, and so do what you can where you are. I mean, you get going. And then I think like bringing these conversations into our workplaces, right? So I've done, conversations, for different companies, and, it's a little uncomfortable when people hear the Emancipation Proclamation for the first time, they be shook, but it's like, but it's true.
Exactly. Literally written.
And it's like, and why haven't we ever read this in this totality? And so just like this idea around, in the age of AI, which is, actually not producing new thought. It's re-giving us what we already have. They say by 2026, AI will have like been able to take all the information that exists currently and have it.
Wow.
And so we have to continue to produce our original thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And write and think and, you know, be critical and passionate and ask questions, because like everything that is given us is ours.
Absolutely.
Which is kind of like, you know, with Black culture, like what they be giving us is like what we already came up with, you know, but
always.
But you know, that's another thing as well. And then find, you know, what makes you go. You know, some passion projects that I do research on history, Black history in Dallas. And that's something that makes me happy, right? Like, I know it's intense, but I'd be at the library studying, going through the archives. You know, I got
pictures of stacks of books. I'm like, what is she doing?
I got a little library dude named Mr. Payton, and we be in there.
Gosh,
Woo,
Mr. Payton.
He'd be like,
Shout out to Mr. Payton.
he'd be like, oh, baby, I found you this book. You know, and that's my joy.
Oh, I love that.
And so just like for all of us to have that is just so
whatever that is for you.
whatever
Yeah.
that is for you.
This has been such a healing conversation for me, because I didn't realize how much I think I don't know if this is even relatable to anybody, but if it relates to you, I'm very curious about history. I minored in Africana studies. I've just always been very curious about my history and understanding, okay, where did I come from? And so I've had several conversations with my mom about like, so why we still, like, you the only one who left, right? And there's a couple of cousins and distant people, but like in my head, right, thinking I would just leave. I would just go up north. I would just, right? Like you kind of project, and this is younger me, obviously, but I think there are a lot of people who think that it's like, oh, we're not going to let that happen. I'll just... What if my family did leave? There's no record of it because they were captured. There's no, right? Like there's so many possibilities that probably could have happened. And also maybe they didn't because they were trying to rest, right? Maybe they were being idle, right? Which was illegal. There's so many, again, possibilities. And so to give your family, your history, I think there's a settling that comes with acceptance of like, what truly happened and not this surface thing, right? And that nothing is really new. Like we've been out here fighting. Reconstruction is real, right? And the resistance of that now looks like Project 2025 is right. Like I think there's a lot of podcasts, and yes, we're on a podcast, but this one is amazing.
It is.
But there are a lot of podcasts out there that talk about like, this is all we got to do. Here's the 5 steps. Go get your LLC. Go get, right? And this now we're going to all be millionaires and be able to save ourselves. It's like, no, there's actually so much history from our ancestors, and they have done all of the things, and we've been fighting for a long time. So it would behoove us to go back and read history and learn about like what our ancestors have done and fought through, what they've tried and quote unquote failed at, so that we can learn from those lessons. I think in general, we need to know our history so we can learn, but Black people, we really need to know our history. And I think it teaches you who, like you're saying, all of these identity, self-identity aspects that truly empower you. Like I feel, again, like I said, very settled. And, you know, I'm going to pass this on to my mom. Like, yeah, maybe we're not in Detroit or in New York or where some of these prominent families now live, right? You do your history, you'll be like, well, why my family still down in Mississippi, right? And I've read several books about like the Delaney sisters and these different families that made it out, we'll say, and how established they are. And they were the first teachers to do whatever. And it's just like, okay, no, your history is still very important.
It is.
You may not know it all, but go get the pieces that you do know, right? And start on the journey of finding out what that looks like. So thank you for this, because I didn't even expect to have that like healing and understanding.
I think that's interesting, because if you don't come to that place, you can almost hold grudges and anger against our family, right?
Absolutely.
Starting at your immediate parents all the way up. So when you were talking, it kind of just allowed me to personally extend a little bit of a grace, like grace to my ancestors.
Yes.
Like, you didn't all have it figured out.
You did the best you could for real.
Like, legitimately, people are out here doing the best that they could.
Yes.
On a day-to-day basis.
That's good.
And that just allows that humanity piece that you were talking about. I think that grace really allows that to happen. Whether you start with yourself, right? And then it extends to all of the different individuals, whether they are alive or not. It allows you to just be like, oh, like, you never really actually truly know what anybody was facing or is going through, you know? And so
it's anti-shame, right? And that's really at the core of what it is. Because if you have this shame, like my family didn't do X, Y, and Z, and that's why I'm, right? Like you can't forgive it. And that shame is a part of you. Like to heal that is now something that you take on in power to do the things that you're meant to do.
Yeah, and one of the things that I say, y'all, is, you know, I know the quote goes around, we are ancestors' wildest dreams. And I say, but they were ours.
Yes.
Their survival through what they experienced and us being here.
Wow.
I can't imagine.
Yeah,
You
because
know?
we just hear the story of what it was. We don't actually hear the story of like what it was to go through. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's interesting. You know?
My. We can Uber and Google and do all the things. They had to figure out how to pass messages in a whole nother way. Like, that's a whole nother tangent. Might have to have a part 2, girl.
Yeah. This is so good. Thank you both for having me. I really, really appreciate it. I'm full.
Oh, yay. Okay, let's do rapid fire, right, Sands?
Yes, I think we have one more little segment. It's rapid fire questions.
Yes.
Okay.
Kayla, I'll let you start.
I love how she got so excited.
Actually, like, pulled up.
Yes.
There's no right or wrong answer to this segment. It's, you know, a couple of questions. But there's no right or wrong answer. Really just kind of like let us know what's the first thing that comes to your mind.
Ready?
Yes.
I always do this. Okay. Your current book, what's like on your nightstand right now?
Yes. So I mentioned, well, I'm reading like all books about Texas right now. So I said the Dance of Freedom, and I have also, what stays on my nightstand is June Jordan. She's like one of my favorite artists, poets, revolutionaries of all time. She's just a badass. So
Go check out June Jordan.
Right.
Historical figure that you admire.
Historical figure that I admire. I feel like I should have. Okay. Julia C. Frazier. She is a Black woman who taught in Dallas. She has a school actually named for her in Dallas, and I've been doing research on her. But her journey is just phenomenal. She was the 3rd Black woman to graduate from Howard, and went on to come and teach in schools in Dallas. She knew Latin. She knew foreign languages. She's the first Black woman to be appointed as principal. And just the more that I learn about her, I'm like, oh my gosh, this woman was doing it. And she was born in 1863 and died in 1929. And she traveled the world, but also the country.
Wow.
You know, so she was like in 25 different cities. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, she was trying to see the world.
She was with it.
Yeah.
Back then when people were telling you you're free, but stay put.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
She was like, nah.
I draw so much strength
I'm
from
gonna try
that,
something
you know,
else.
around
Yeah.
what is possible.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I got to look her up. Hidden talent that you possess.
I feel like I'm very uncoordinated. I'm like, what would I say?
You're so talented.
Yeah, I'm so talented. Oh, I can garden.
You do garden.
That
I
is
keep
a great
plants
talent.
alive. You know, that's also
because I do not have a green thumb, and I see people's gardens, and I'm like, I love it.
me and my little flowers. I got a garden.
Okay.
And that has been very therapeutic. But like, I'm actually good at this.
That is an extreme talent. So
I had to
please
think
do
about
not
it, but
don't
I was
put
like,
your
play
talent
that.
in the shadow.
yeah,
'cause
I was like, doing the Dougie, not quite, but I am from Dallas, but planting and gardening.
I love
That's
that.
it right now. And then writing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
Yes.
write.
Amazing.
So we talked about passing the message a little bit, right? What's a message that you would pass to your younger self?
June Jordan says this, and I'll just paraphrase. Her concept is that we will not become free or liberated by killing or deadening any parts of our true selves. And so by wearing our hair a certain way, as the examples that I give, talking a certain way, you know, even though I got my Chloe sandals on, being designer down a certain way. And that, like, the true acceptance is of us. And that's something that I think about a lot, is the ways in which I had been taught to make myself small, to make myself fit. And you still just gonna be this black girl. And so get into it, lean into it, you know?
Brilliant
and
black
love
girl.
Her,
yes.
Because it's important. And I believe it's very important to know that we cannot continue to shrink ourselves and make ourselves not true to who we are.
Yeah, I was going to say it's almost a truer sense of self-awareness, right? Beyond the fluff and what we've been conditioned to. And like, do you really actually like this? Yourself. Or have you been told to like this, right?
My mama liked it, so I must like it.
Right.
My grandma liked it. My aunties like it.
That gets to like self-awareness at a whole nother level. Just because all my friends have the, you know, Brandon Blackwood or the Telfar or the, you know, whatever the designer person is, like, is that who I'm around that's influencing that, or is that actually something that I?
Yep. And shrinking is such a, like, you know,
it's subtle, but it like. It's like pervasive but subtle.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I
like
feel
it's
like
everywhere.
It is. It is. And we can do it in so many aspects. But what does it really mean to be anti-shrinking, right? Like, I think that's important to know. All right. Is there a message that you would like to leave to all of our listeners today?
It's you are the prize. You your best part. As Paul D says to Setha and Beloved, you your best thing.
That's true.
You your best thing.
Shout out to Toni Morrison. We love you, girl. All right. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Definitely one of my favorites, if not my favorite. So thank you for joining us today. We love you.
Yes, Amber. It's a pleasure meeting you, right? Because this is our first time meeting today. I am definitely going to be following your work. You know. Loved it.
Definitely.
It is early, but we got to it, and I really appreciate that. Can you just let us know, like I said, one, thank you for joining us on the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Kayla and I are extremely appreciative when people make time for, you know, just having a conversation with us. And really, like I said, the more that we can share and have these conversations, the more people become aware as well. But let us know, can you just let everybody know, like, where they can find you, where they can follow your work, where they can get involved in your work, and just, you know, where they can find you on the interwebs or in real life.
My organization is Young Leaders Strong City, and our website is ylscmovement.com. You can also find us on Instagram at Young Leaders Strong City, all spelled out. And then for my research work, it is called Dallas Forgot. And if you search that, my articles will come up.
But thank you again. We can't wait till this goes live so people get this knowledge. You broke down so much for people. And just to make sure we're really commemorating Juneteenth in the way that I feel like our ancestors would want us to, by just looking it up, looking up the history, reading about it, and resting. Revolutionary rest, I feel like, could be a way to do that as well. So thanks again, Amber, and thank you all for listening and watching. This has been the Good, Better, Betterness podcast, and we will see you next time. Peace. Welcome to the society. Girl, we're in here. It's our member-focused space to talk all things wellness and self-care. And no, we're not just talking about bubble baths and sound bowls, but if that is your thing, go off, okay?
We've created this space to talk about wellness when it looks like rest, taking off, saying no, and doing less. The purpose of Betterness is to welcome the freedom to make choices for yourself, as you need to.
Exactly. But the real question is, are the girlies even on Facebook still? Are we actively engaged in these Zuckerberg group chats or nah? Please let us know, because we ain't trying to be here if you ain't here, okay? So make sure to tell us.
But for real, we want the space to exist where we don't have to be anything but who we actually are. The posturing that we have to do for work, literally over it. The service that we get to do for our partners and families, it takes a lot out of us. Do it with a loving heart, but yes. So if this little corner of Beyonce's internet can be a respite for you, sis, let it be. That's all we want for us.
So let's do betterness, wellness, and all the societying right here together. Let's talk about being Black women, how we're keeping our bodies and minds together, and how we're choosing to show up in our lives in the ways that define our own sense of being. Cool? Cool.
Welcome, ladies. You're gonna love it here.
Hey sis, we thank you for honoring yourself by taking the time to listen to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Thank you for joining us on the journey to betterness.